found guilty of outlawry, theft, murder, abduction, and high treason. But she has betrayed her own Norman people. Are you not ashamed, my Lady Marian?
Yes, I am. Bitterly. But it's a shame that I'm a Norman, after seeing the things my fellow countrymen have done to England. At first, I wouldn't believe. Because I was a Norman, I wouldn't let myself believe that the horrors you inflicted on the Saxons were just and right. I know now why you tried so hard to kill this outlaw whom you despised. It's because he was the one man in England who protected the helpless against a lot of beasts who were drunk on human blood. And now you intend to murder your own brother.
You'll be sorry you interfered.
Sorry? I'd do it again if you killed me for it.
Prophetic speech, my lady. For that is exactly what is going to happen to you.
You wouldn't dare.
And all that.
Sergeant Nash, could I speak to you for a minute?
Yeah, sure, Lieutenant.
What's this?
Well, that's the number at the sorority house.
Felicia?
Yeah, it's a new exchange. FE.
No exchange?
Yeah, Felicia. One of the girls that was in this afternoon gave it to me.
She gave it to you.
Yeah.
Nash, I don't think you could pick your nose without written instructions.
I know. Something dirty, ain't it?
Chris Skelza here with
Matt Howell.
And on this episode of The First Run, Matt and I are going to discuss the new Netflix actioner starring Charlize Theron, The Old Guard. We'll also continue our International Science Fiction Marathon, this time with the Spanish import Timecrimes. We'll review our 5 favorite films, well, of a sci-fi bent, released between 2000 and 2009. And then, of course, as always, we'll tell you the big releases coming out on home video, including your streaming and straight-to-DVD picks of the week. Are you ready? Matt is nodding.
Oh, that was a question for me. I thought that was just like a...
No, it's rhetorical flourish.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I just like to engage you. You're a lot more quieter in this section. This is one of those places where I have an opportunity to really shine with these intros that I probably nail... I want to be conservative and say 60% of the time.
Oh, give yourself a little credit. I would say like 63% of the time.
Nice. So let's start everything off with a clip from The Old Guard.
It's been over 200 years. Why now?
Everything happens for a reason, boss. We have to find her.
No, we stick to the plan. We find Copley.
So we just leave her out in the open?
No, we're in the open. We're the ones who are exposed now.
Not like her, Booker.
Nikki.
Not like her. You can tell me you don't remember what it was like. Whoever she is, she's confused. And she's scared. And she's more alone than she has ever been in her entire life. We all remember what it was like. She needs us.
I'll handle the retrieval.
Hey, boss, come on.
If we're dreaming about her, she's dreaming about us. That makes her a beacon straight to us. Jesus. She's just a baby.
So, Matt, what is The Old Guard all about? And then my question for you is, does Netflix have a brand spanking new franchise on its hands? And given the output they've been giving us for the most part, is that necessarily a good thing?
All right, so The Old Guard is about a quartet of warriors, soldiers who are essentially immortal. They've been around for hundreds, in some cases thousands of years, spending their time going through history, acting as mercenaries and killers who heal from every wound that they receive, and they don't age. While they're on assignment, they are double-crossed, and they discover that a new member of their species group has emerged, and they have to try and go find this person before they get led back to them and the people who are pursuing them.
Good times. So answer my damn question.
No. Simple fact, no. So I forget who said it. I don't know if it was one of our podcast friends or if it was somebody else, but that basically Netflix has tricked people into watching straight-to-DVD films, and that's what this is. I mean, even with the fact that it has Charlize Theron, a massive action star, someone who really generally would elevate the material that she's in. I mean, she's an Oscar winner, for God's sakes. This strikes me as like Universal Soldier, like the straight-to-DVD versions of it. For something that's very action-oriented, and even some of the scenes are very cool and well choreographed, and the fact that it has an interesting idea, it's just incredibly dull throughout the whole thing. I could not emotionally connect with any of these characters. I just did not care about any of them.
I think that's fair. I think the issue, the first thing I wrote down while I was watching this is it's John Wick light, right? I think we're at that, we talked a little bit about The Matrix and how influential it was last week. I think Wick's hit that level. And there's the way the action is choreographed in the fight scenes. But again, it's like you said, it's that straight to DVD feel to it. But it's got a budget of $70 million. But it still has that kind of vibe. I'm wondering what it is Netflix just they're signing a big star, right, to kind of be the representation of what they're presenting, and then they filled it in with a bunch of bit players. So it has Kiki Lane of our beloved If Beale Street Could Talk, as well as Chiwetel Ejiofor, right? So okay, but the problem is that it just feels very, I've seen this before, right? It's a film filled with cliches. Now, don't get me wrong. I think it's goofy and fun, but it is so blaringly obvious what's going to happen around every corner. So the reveal of who our bad guy, that turn there when that hits, it's just obvious from the get-go what's going to happen. Right. They do another presentation of another character that you just know from the instant they show what happened to her in that Iron Maiden that she's going to come back at some point, and of course that she represents the setup for a potential sequel, right? And it's just like that stuff over and over again. Charlize is quite good in this. I think it is a relatively well done homosexual relationship that didn't really feel forced to me at all. Felt very natural, which I thought was good. And it tries to kind of have this pseudo-political message of focusing on the greed of corporations to the potential detriment to the general public. All right. But it seems more shoehorned in as an afterthought. The issue that, Matt, is that even though it's generally enjoyable, though kind of dumb, it's just dogged by convention and story beats that have no real impact or hit, right? It's just not...
I think you're right. I mean, it's all well-worn, cliched material that it's all very by the numbers. And honestly, I think it's interesting that you said that Charlize is quite good, but I would say it's far from her best work. And I think she's just so good in general, but I still get the feeling that she is hardcore, like phoning this in. Like she's good enough as on her own to elevate the material that you think everybody around her is, Charlize is good in this, but this is like one of the first movies I've seen of hers where I feel like she's really in it for a paycheck of her later work.
You might be right about that. It may be the lack of everything else that elevates her. It's kind of that the bar is so low that she looks like she's exceeding stuff because everything else is just kind of like, okay, yeah. I mean, listen, this is no Furiosa, all right? No. For sure. It doesn't have half the depth or the impact that her character does in that film. So
it's not even Atomic Blonde, for God's sakes. No. I didn't love that movie, but I liked it way more than I like this.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would even recommend that. If you're going to watch a Charlize actioner and you've already seen Fury Road a dozen times like the rest of us, Check out what is it? Why am I Atomic Blonde?
Yeah,
Action Blonde. check out Atomic Blonde. I think you'll get it. It's pretty enjoyable. So no, I would recommend that over this. Absolutely.
I think you have a first run original on your hand right there. Action Blonde. Get started on the screenplay.
We're gonna be billionaires.
Yeah. Action Blonde.
It looks like Charlize is up for anything.
Apparently, yeah.
So Netflix reported, Matt, that this was on pace to be viewed in 72 million households over the first month of its release. And it was among the top 10 most successful original launches in the platform's history. It was the top streamed item the weekend it came out on July 10th.
Okay.
So, but how do you measure that in regards to, like, investment return? That whole thing with Netflix is real cloudy,
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me because the way Netflix makes its money is two ways, really. You've got the existing subscriber base and you want them to stay. Whereas I think that's probably relatively easy because Netflix is very established on brand, and the fact that, let's not underestimate the laziness of the consumer. Like, it's easy to sign up for something, but it's a pain in the ass to cancel it. So most people are not, since it's, whatever it is, $10 a month. The real thing is, I don't know if any of these films are bringing in new subscribers. Like, I can't imagine that The Old Guard or Extraction is just burning up the charts. Like, I gotta sign up for Netflix kind of thing here in the US. I mean, maybe it is overseas, maybe in more emerging markets for them. Maybe that's true. I don't know, but I can't imagine it's doing what they need to do. Like, I don't know if this is a situation where they're just sitting on so much capital that they have to spend it. I don't know.
It's just filler until Stranger Things 4. I think there are a couple things that I think that are worth signing up for, and that maybe, I think Stranger Things would be one of them. That's the thing, though. I don't know if I would sign up specifically for a particular thing. It's the bulk of the content, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Netflix actually has a lot of great stuff on there right now, and it's mostly not their original content. Mm-hmm. They have a lot of great catalog stuff that is currently available on the platform. So I don't know.
Oh, I think part of it is obviously the situation that we're in. We're all in lockdown. We can't go to the movies. So this is, an A-list star, an action vehicle, something that everybody already has. So, like, what else are you going to do? I mean, what else are you going to watch? That's fine. I think that's why people are watching it. If we were still in a normal situation and this thing was just released on Netflix, it would be a blip. And it's not like Netflix can't do it. Like, I know Roma's a Netflix film, but did they buy Roma and distribute it, or did they actually finance it to be made?
That's a good question.
Because if it's the latter, then obviously they've got it in them to produce a great film.
Well, they did Marriage Story too, right? Baumbach's film. That was quite good.
True. Yeah.
So let's jump into here, and I'll just pull all of this out until I find it. So Cuarón, basically, his company, Esperanto Films, along with Participant Media, produced the whole thing, and Netflix bought the distribution rights.
Gotcha. Okay.
So,
yeah.
I think that was the big thing. That was their attempt. Yeah, premiered at the Venice International Film Festival and then at Telluride here in the States. And they were all over it. I guess it was in an attempt to really add some legitimacy, artistic legitimacy, I guess, to their outputs by getting a prestige film like Roma. So yeah, no, they weren't in in that one from the get-go. Marriage Story, I don't know the case on that one. They may have been with that one.
Okay.
But that one I don't know. Let's check that one out here. Yep. Netflix produced and distributed.
Okay.
So they were involved with that one.
Yeah. They seem a little bit behind the kind of Amazon curve, whereas Amazon seems to be much more in producing quality content that I think will actually do better in drawing people in from a film perspective.
But we're a niche audience. I don't know.
We are.
Is it worth the dollar spend? Or you can just keep churning out stuff to keep people watching that of middle quality.
I think the broader appeal stuff is honestly not film. Like, if you're going to try and bring people in with film, you got to bring in the film nerd niche audience. I think the stuff that's going to bring in kind of like your everybody else or the average person is going to be like series, like a Stranger Thing, because that's the stuff that kind of hooks you in. But like, nobody's really signing up because of a movie, and if they do, they watch it and then they cancel immediately. That kind of thing.
You're entirely right.
But can I do a quick call it for you?
Sure.
This Old Guard or Extraction?
Oh, interesting. I'm leaning towards Extraction just because it's more brutal. I think the action is more intense in Extraction.
Yeah.
But they're both so cliched.
Yeah, they are.
I'm not sure. Where do you fall? That's
I think the Old Guard has a really interesting premise, and I wish that it had been executed a little bit better. But I think that kind of lack of execution gives Extraction the edge. I think I had more fun watching Extraction. Not a lot of fun, but just more fun. So, like, that's what's going to give it the edge.
All right. So we're Hemsworth daddies. Is that a thing?
That's right.
That's a good one. What is that? I got one more call for you then. Pick your Chris. Where are we now? Because I think we did this years ago, but things have changed drastically. You have your Pine, your Pratt, your Hemsworth, and Evans.
Right.
I think Pratt's out of the picture at this point.
Yeah, I think he is too. As much as I still watch when Parks and Recs comes on, like I still watch it, and he's still great in it. I think he's hilarious in that. But some of his politics, and which is not really fair necessarily because it's not super terrible, but his later output like Jurassic Park and stuff, like I don't care.
And then there's the space assault film. Right.
No,
that he did with
right.
Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah.
What, Passengers or something?
Yeah.
That one doesn't really sit well with me either. So
I think if they had kept the original ending where she lets him die, but then she does the same thing because she goes crazy from being alone, I think that would have been a better film as opposed to they all lived happily ever after like they did.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was the original ending, or that was the original proposal. But anyway, I would say, for me personally, I get more excited for Hemsworth's output just because I think he's a lot of fun to watch. But if I had to say somebody who I think is probably on the trajectory for the best actor kind of stuff, I would say Evans. But I think personally I'm going to go Hemsworth because I love me some himbo Hemsworth. It's so much fun.
I'm torn between Evans and Pine.
Are you? Okay.
Hemsworth is 2, right? But it's like Evans and Pine is 1 and 1A. And I'm not quite sure. I mean, I love his Kirk, Chris Pine's Kirk, and he's great in Wonder Woman. Mm-hmm. And I don't.
He was really good in Hell or High Water too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. If we're talking about like who's got the better roles, you're probably right. It's Pine or Evans. But if you're talking about the one I have the most fun watching, it's got to be Hemsworth.
And I love Evans, though. Just he seems like a generally good guy. Not that most of them all seem to be anyway.
Right.
But the other thing is I'm not as familiar with Evans's work outside of the MCU. I think I've maybe seen 1 or 2 things. Well, Scott Pilgrim, but that's not really Chris Evans' vehicle.
Knives Out.
Yeah, true. He's a lot of fun in that. I guess right now it's Pine for me, but I could be talked into Evans.
Yeah, I need to catch up with that Defending Jacob thing. I hear it's quite good on Apple TV, and now that I'm signed up for the next year, I got to check it out. Yeah,
and I think I have 6 months left of my own Apple TV. Yeah, so I'll have to
decide if you're going to keep it. I feel like
I'm not going to keep it.
No, you're not.
Greyhound was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, but I don't. Though the Mrs. First Run loves the Steve Carell, Jennifer Aniston, Reese Witherspoon show. What is it, morning show or something?
Okay.
I did not like it at all.
No.
It's high production value. I mean, they spend a lot of money on it, and you can tell. Yeah. But it's just very rote and very dull and
Yeah, between the content that I'm already getting on Prime and Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus, I just can't see myself keeping another one, so.
Good times. Well, that was our discussion of the Old Guard.
Yeah, it was. This is what you get when we do this when we're not exhausted. You get better. You get better, Matt and Chris. What are you going to give the Old Guard? We never actually graded it.
Oh wow, yeah, huh? Man,
yeah.
Look at that. C+.
Yeah, you know what? That's exactly what I'm going to go with as well. You know what? No. C. I'm giving it a C. A gentleman's C.
That works for me. Yeah, we're going to maybe try recording these a little earlier during the day. We're doing this at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
instead of the 9:30, 10 o'clock. There's a different feel to it. That's a good point. All right, I'll have to consider that. Have you seen The Old Guard, currently streaming on Netflix? Shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Let's spend a few minutes and talk about what's coming up on your physical media this upcoming Tuesday, August 4th.
Mr. Saito, we can train your subconscious to defend itself from even the most skilled extractor.
How can I do that?
Because I am the most skilled extractor. I know how to search your mind and find your secrets. I know the tricks, and I can teach them to you so that even when you're asleep, your defense is never down. Look, if you want my help, you're gonna have to be completely open with me. I need to know my way around your thoughts better than your wife, better than your therapist, better than anyone. If this is a dream and you have a safe full of secrets, I need to know what's in that safe. In order for this all to work, you need to completely let me in.
Enjoy your evening, gentlemen. As I consider your proposal. He knows.
So you're saying, Chris, what? That's Inception. That's been out on Blu-ray, and it's already out on 4K. Why are you bringing that up this week? Well, because Best Buy is releasing a steelbook version of Inception. And I wanted to ask Matt a question. So, on the Twitter sphere, there has seemed to be lately a turning against Inception, and I think generally a backlash against Nolan particularly. And I'm wondering why that is. I have a theory. I'm curious have you seen that at all? Like, I've seen a couple people saying Inception is highly overrated and it's really dumb and falls apart if you think about it for a second.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. Okay, one, it could be the Rick and Morty effect, because Rick and Morty had an entire episode where they incepted people and all they talked about is how stupid Inception is and how it doesn't hold up. So that's could be some nerd pop culture influencing some other nerd pop culture. But honestly, to be quite honest with you, I really enjoy Inception, but it's always been that way. I mean, I think even when we talked about it, however long ago it was when it came out, we were like, if you really kind of look at this thing, the logic doesn't necessarily hold up, but you just kind of got to go with it. I mean, that's okay. Like, everything else around it is fine. Yeah. If it's Nolan backlash, honestly, it's probably because of for me, it was probably for his film pretentiousness. I think, there's only so much that people are going to willing to stomach that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think also a lot of it were this Tenet stuff. I think people were pretty jazzed to go see it. And that's not necessarily his fault, but he seems like the kind of guy, like, if I can't put it in a movie theater and have people see it that way first, I will never release it. He seems to be that kind of guy to me. So I think that's part of it too.
I think that's exactly what it is. I think there's a certain group that are basically that he keeps pushing Tenet for that theatrical release, and again, they have now finally pulled it entirely. Mm-hmm. And there's no official release date. In fact, I think just yesterday, a bunch of other films have been pulled as well for the release dates in 2020. I think, like we've talked about online and Twitter, and then just you and I too, and probably I assume on the show, we're done. I think the year is done. We're not going back to the theaters in 2020. So, but I think that's what it is there's a backlash against his persistent kind of push for Tenet to be the film that reopens the theaters, right? Mm-hmm. And I think there's groups that think that he's more concerned with that than it is the safety of the film-going audience, right? Which I think is maybe a bridge too far. But yeah, so I don't know. Inception's still fun, just like Matt said. It's just pop it on, enjoy it. Tom Hardy's a blast in that thing. So one of the greatest wire work fight scenes you'll ever see. Yeah. It's still amazing to watch. That's true. So what else is coming out? A film we discussed a couple months ago, Swallow, about a young woman, a new bride, who is basically, her life is out of her own control at this point. So she develops the habit. That's not quite a habit. Is it a disease? It's a psychological... There's a name for it. There's a name for it. I don't know what it is, but there is a name for it. Where especially with pregnant women, they eat things that they're not supposed to eat. That's not food. Exactly. So I rather enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed it more than Matt did, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I didn't love it. It was okay. So you can check out Swallow now in physical media. Capital in the 21st Century, which is based on the international bestseller by, I love this, rock star economist Thomas Piketty, which sold over 3 million copies. Well, this is a documentary about his book. I actually got the audiobook out of the library to listen to it. I've been looking forward to kind of catching up with this. So now I just have to figure out when. Shout Factory is giving us The Resistance Fighter, which is based on basically the Polish James Bond, is what he was known as. He was a man of extraordinary courage who served as an emissary between the commanders of Poland's resistance movement and the Polish government in exile in London at the height of the Second World War. Another film called The House of Hummingbird, based in Seoul in 1994, in the year of the Songsu Bridge collapse, a 14-year-old Yoon Hee wanders the city searching for love. The Soul Collector, also known as 8, is being released. It's an old man who is fated to collect souls for eternity, who seeks atonement after trading his daughter's soul. And finally, Shudder is releasing Satan's Slaves. After dying from a strange illness that she suffered for 3 years, a mother returns home to pick up her children. New to Blu-ray, Criterion is releasing The Lost Honor of Katharina Blum. When a young woman spends the night with an alleged terrorist, her quiet, ordered life falls into ruins. It's a brand new 4K restoration of that film approved by the director, Volker Schalendorf. A new interview and a couple actually old ported over archival ones as well as excerpts from a 1997 documentary on the author that the film is based on, the book I should say. Another 4K Best Buy Steelbook, The Town, Ben Affleck's film, is being released as well. Matt, your straight-to-DVD pick of the week is Patriot, A Nation at War. A disavowed CIA agent goes on the run when mercenaries learn she possesses a memory card that could start World War III. A memory card? I would, if it was like a floppy disk, I think I'd be all over this thing.
Yeah. It's too modern for you.
There you go. What should we be streaming this week?
All right, so I did it last week, and I'm going to do it again this week. I'm going to recommend an actual television series. Sorry, last time, I promise. But
you son of a bitch!
I've been catching up with a Damon Lindelof show that I never watched back in the day. Damon Lindelof, obviously one of the minds behind Lost, for whatever you think about that. Also, the recent Watchmen, which was quite good. But this is one of his other HBO series, The Leftovers, where essentially I think 1% of the world's population mysteriously disappears in a rapture-like event, and it's all about the people left behind trying to cope with that event. I'm about halfway through it, about halfway into the second season, and it's bananas, and it's crazy, and it's good, and I like it. So I think everybody should, if you're into that kind of deep mystery shows, I would check it out. And I like to think that Lindelof learned his lesson and from Lost and not having answers to everything, because everything he's producing now seems to be having an answer to his MacGuffins.
From what I understand, the first season is just okay, and then it gets much better after that.
Yeah, so the first season's good, but the second season really kind of leans into kind of the broader mysteries of the thing, whereas the first season's really focused on more of the human drama. So I guess it's really a matter of what you're into.
Yeah, I never got into it. I never watched it. So conceptually, I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting, but never really enough to hook me. So
yeah, it took me like I just kind of like false started it a few times, but since I'm like desperate to watch things at this point, like I sat through it, and after about the third or fourth episode, that's when I was hooked. It took about that long for me to really get into it.
I still need to watch Barry. If I understand, that's quite good. So
that is amazing. Barry is fantastic. It is so dark, and it is so funny, and Bill Hader is just amazing in that show. You really need to watch that.
I've enjoyed
it's only half-hour episodes too.
I know, I got to get on that. I've been enjoying the new Perry Mason series on HBO, but it's different because none of the characters are who they are in the show.
Right.
Perry, he's not a defense attorney. He's a private investigator, but it's gorgeous. I mean, it looks great, and it's a noir. It's quite good. It's just it's a Perry Mason in name only. I mean, there's no.
Maybe they're building to a second season where he decides to become a defense attorney.
Maybe could be. I don't know. And I did finish The Outsider, based on the Stephen King thing with.
What did you think of that?
It was okay. Yeah. It was all right.
It starts off really strong. It doesn't end quite as strong, but it starts off like it grabs you in the beginning.
Yeah. No, I agree. All right. Good times. Matt, let's go ahead and keep on rolling. Let's spend 50 minutes talking about the latest film in our International Science Fiction Marathon, the Spanish thriller Timecrimes.
Este eres tú. Esta flecha avanza del pasado al futuro. ¿Vale? Pero en este punto entras en una cubeta y viajas al pasado 1 hora y media aproximadamente. Hasta aquí. Te conviertes en algo así como Héctor 2. De tu casa sería Héctor 1.
¿Héctor 1?
Héctor 1, tu reflejo en el espejo. ¿Recuerdas? Mira, estás aquí, te estás viendo a ti mismo, pero solo hay una flecha.
¿Cuánto tiempo...?
Tu reflejo durará hasta aquí. Esto es lo que haremos. Tú te escondes aquí. Yo bajo al sótano, configuro la cubeta y después subo al silo. Lo pongo todo a punto y espero que se haga de noche. Héctor 1 aparecerá. Le convenceré de que se meta en la máquina y le mandaré al pasado. Y este es el trato.
Wow. So, Matt, Timecrimes is the debut feature from the director of Colossal, the Anne Hathaway film from a few years back that I quite enjoyed.
Yeah.
So, Nacho Vigalondo, he directs and writes his film about a guy who runs afoul. He basically accidentally time travels an hour and a half into the past. And then he is stalked by this mysterious figure in this pink bandage wrapping, trying, we think, to kill him. And it's a time travel movie. I love time travel movies, but they make my head hurt. They can be very convoluted, and sometimes the internal logic of these things don't really make a lot of sense. This is a time loop where basically a guy has to stop a time loop from happening, right? Because it just keeps resetting, and then new versions of himself keep popping up.
Mm-hmm.
Nat, are you able to set aside... Now listen, you read a lot more than I do, so I think you may be a little smarter about this stuff. Were you able to follow this a little better than I was? And are you able to kind of turn that off and kind of just sink in and enjoy these kind of time travel movies?
I enjoy time travel movies, and the crux really of every time travel movie is the paradox, right? So
that's right.
The question becomes, is everything predestined to happen? Like no matter what you do, it's going to happen the way it's always happened, like a 12 Monkeys kind of thing? Or is it like you can change the past, whereas that in turn affects the future, like a Terminator or something like that? And that's really kind of the time travel movies seem to fall on either side of that fence. I'm not going to tell you which one this is, but the problem is these things kind of live or die by their internal logic. Mm-hmm. And I think this one's on really shaky ground. I think especially kind of like around the second time loop, like it starts to like kind of like, okay, I don't know if this is working. Whereas by the final one, it's like, okay, yeah, I guess, but I'm still not on board with this in total. I think part of the problem with this thing is that the main character, the protagonist, Hector, he's an idiot. Especially he's like this oafish idiot.
Well, not by the end, though, and that's part of what I think makes, for me, the film so enjoyable, is Hector's evolution.
True, Hector does evolve, but it always drives me crazy in these time travel movies where if somebody you know very intimately, like your husband or like a child, shows up and says, "Oh, you got to come with me, don't question," and they spend all this time like arguing about what's going on. Like, nobody would do that. That drives me freaking crazy. Or even why you would be so stupid as to be like, "Hey, don't ask me any questions, but we got to leave right now." Why wouldn't you just say, "Hey, I need to go to the store. Why don't you come with me?" And then it's all solved. Like, nobody would ever question that. Like, it's like these things irritate me because it's like science fiction doesn't exist in these worlds. Like, nobody's seen the Terminator in these things. So like they cannot wrap their minds around what's going on. And I don't know. I think maybe that's a weakness of the genre at this point, is because everything is so tropey. It just is frustrating to me when the characters take so long to kind of catch on.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It seems like I may have enjoyed this more than you did. One of the things I did enjoy, like I said, is Hector's evolution, but I also really appreciated that they just hired some guy, right? It's like there's no George Clooney's in this film, right?
No.
It's just they hired someone's dad to play this guy, and I think he does a fine job. Listen, I like how this thing plays out, right? Because it starts off with this kind of, I don't know, like perhaps there's some kind of drama between him and his wife, and then it turns into this kind of mystery thriller, and then it turns into like a sci-fi comedy, right? By the end of the film. And I loved how he's able to explain kind of how everything happens and how every little moment is linked to another part that happened before, right?
Right.
And we see those connections eventually as the film plays out. Now, I blind bought this back when Blockbuster was selling used DVDs.
Mm-hmm.
This is in Simsbury. I remember clearly buying it at that Simsbury location across from the Chili's. Do you remember where that one was?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a walk-in clinic now.
That's right. So, but anyway, and I bought that and I had never watched it. So it's been probably 15 years, 10 years. It came out in 2006, right? When did this come out? 06? 2007. So it's been quite a while. So obviously not 15 years, right? That math doesn't work on that. But it's been 10 years, we'll say. And I never watched it. And one of the great things about my DVD is that it includes a chronological version.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I did not watch that. I did not have time. I started to. I got about 15, 20 minutes in. I had other things I had to do. So I do want to go back, though, and complete that chronological watch. But it was interesting watching at least a part of it that I did. So, but I don't know, man. I really enjoyed it. Like I say, I think that you said, I don't know if it works, if the film's internal logic is sound at all. But that's, like you said, and we said, that's always kind of the catch with these things. But for me, it doesn't get in the way of the fun. And I don't think you should let it bother you either. I think there are enough thrills and moments and scares that later turn into laughs. Not gut-busting laughs, but nice little moments, that are reveal what's happened, that I would definitely recommend watching it. I rather enjoyed it. But it sounds like you're not quite there.
Yeah, no, I would recommend it. I think, I guess it really depends on your tolerance for these things. I mean, there are parts of it when this thing kind of briefly turns into like a slasher film, like in the middle of this thing. And like some of the stuff, like I was like, man, that's creepy. And I was really on board with some of this stuff. And just like some of the mannerisms that the pink bandaged man are doing, I just thought were like hilarious, but creepy at the same time. So like, I was really on board with it. But after a while, like it just kind of like, it starts to groan under its own weight. And I think for the most part, though, I was on board with this. It kind of lost me in the middle, but it kind of brought back around again. Although I really question why that woman had to strip in the middle of the woods. Like I don't understand what the whole purpose of that was. I mean, I get it and the purpose of the film, but at the same time, it's just strange.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to spoil.
It. I mean, the reason they did it is to bring some boobs in it. That's why they did it.
So, what are you going to give Timecrimes, Matt?
I think I'm going to get a little more. I think you've talked me into a higher grade. I'm going to give it a B-.
Okay. I gave it a B myself.
Okay.
So, good to know. I'm glad I pulled you over a little bit here, over to the dark side.
You did.
So, if you get a chance to see Timecrimes, shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. It is currently available on, is it Hoopla or is it the Canopy?
No, it is Hoopla. It's also available if your library doesn't do Hoopla, you can watch it on the Tubi app. I mean, there are some ads in it. It'll do a couple of brief commercial breaks on it, but it is available there as well. That's how I actually watch it because Hoopla's not available.
Gotcha. Yeah, I watched my DVD, and watching Blu-rays and 4Ks and then going back to DVD, it's really glaringly obvious. Like I had to do that with my Community set because Netflix pulled one of the episodes out of Community because we started rewatching that here at the house.
Gotcha.
And I actually lost my internet the other day, so I couldn't actually watch it. So I popped in the old DVDs, and I'm like, oh god, this looks horrible.
Yeah,
I'm so spoiled. All right, feedback at the first run. Let us know your thoughts. Timecrimes, Spanish time travel, creepy guy in pink bandages. Check it out.
All right.
All right, Matt, let's take a few minutes and then talk about our 5 favorite science fiction films that were released between 2000 and 2009. Here's one. It didn't make the cut for me, Matt. It may make your list, but I think not only maybe that it's more of a horror film, but it also has one of the most... I still can't believe they did this with this film. It blows my mind they went with the ending that they did. It is so... just fatalistic. It is the saddest. It's crushing. So anyway, let me stop babbling and reveal what it is.
Oh my God.
Something in the mist! Something in the mist took John Lee!
Dan, catch your breath.
Something in the mist took John Lee. And I could hear him screaming. Shut the doors! Shut the doors, my God!
Daddy, I'm scared. Can we go home?
Don't go out there. There's something in the mist. It took John Lee. Screw that. I'm getting to my car. Mister, no!
Man, things are not end well for that guy, let me tell you. So Frank Darabont's The Mist, the adaptation of the Stephen King story.
Yeah.
It is... Man, that ending is nihilistic, man. That thing, still, when I think about it, what he ends up doing with that thing.
Yeah, it's rough. That's not how the story ends either.
Oh, no?
So that was it was definitely a change from the story. I think even Stephen King said he preferred the movie's ending to his story's end. Not on my list, but it was an honorable mention for me.
There you go. All right, start us off, Matt. What's your number 5?
All right, so my number 5 is one of the best animated films of the last 20 years. That is Pixar's WALL-E. Basically about a planet that has been, Earth, that's been abused, filled with trash, and then abandoned by humanity and a giant Ark ship. And all that's left is a singular robot of a race of robots that were left behind to clean it up. And the beginning of this film is almost a silent film. It's great. There's like no dialogue. And then it kind of progresses to space and things get wackier. But the kind of humanity that this little box robot displays is just incredible. It's a moving film. Really, we've talked about it at length on this show. If you haven't seen it, you really should do yourself a favor and watch it.
I would hesitate to say it's a classic. I think it's the best thing Pixar's put out. So even above Toy Story films. So that's good. Number 5 is probably going to end up a little higher on Matt's list, so I don't know how much I'll talk about it, but it's Steven Spielberg's Minority Report, which is his meditation basically on free will versus determinism, right? And Tom Cruise plays a cop, and they work with these, they call them precogs, right? Where they're able to see crimes before they happen, and he leads a team of people who are going to arrest them before the crime occurs. And what happens is Cruise's character, supposedly, something happens where he commits a crime. So they go to arrest him before it happens, and hilarity ensues. Now, I've come around on Minority Report a lot over the years. I initially wasn't a huge fan of it, but I watched it again, I believe, earlier this year, and I did like it a lot more. And, so I don't know. I probably won't say much more. I think it's going to come up later. So
it might.
What's your number 4?
All right, so my number 4 is, you wouldn't really necessarily think of it as a science fiction film, but it's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Essentially, it's the near future, and we have the ability to basically hire a company to eradicate the memories of, if you want. And Jim Carrey plays a man who's gone through a very difficult breakup, and he decides that he wants to eliminate all the memories of his ex-girlfriend. And it kind of plays back of the kind of things of the end of the relationship when it was terrible, back to the very beginning when they were falling in love. And he kind of comes to the realization that, maybe these things should be kept, but it's too late as they kind of fall apart. It's a very humane story. It's a very kind of touching romance story. It's heartbreaking in its own ways. Jim Carrey is very good. Kate Winslet, thank you, is excellent in it as well. And it's one of those science fiction films where it doesn't seem like something that we could actually come up with in the next 50 years or so. Like, people will be doing that to their own detriment.
Right. I've never seen it because
it's really good.
When it first came out, I was very anti Jim Carrey. I did not find him annoying. I mean, funny. He annoyed me, and I just would avoid everything he did. So I know I got to come around and check it out at some point. I've always heard how great it is. I got to get on that. My number 4 then is Danny Boyle's Sunshine. You have Cillian Murphy, Rose Byrne, Cliff Curtis, Chris Evans. So what happened, Matt, is the sun has gone out and all life on Earth is dying. So they send out... First, there was an additional expedition basically to go out and reignite the dying sun. It hasn't gone out yet, excuse me. So, but that first expedition disappears. So a second one goes out. This is with Murphy and Evans, Byrne, Michelle Yeoh, Curtis, and all them. And they come across the apparently just abandoned first expedition. they say, well, you know what? It may make sense. If we have 2 payloads instead of the 1 to reignite the sun, that'll be better off. So once they link up to the other ship to kind of figure out what's happening and then progress on their mission, things go horribly, horribly wrong. And I've always really liked Sunshine. Didn't do particularly well, I believe. Written by Alex Garland, which may sway you if you haven't seen it as well, if the Danny Boyle wasn't enough to pull you on board. Didn't do particularly well at the box office, unfortunately, but as aughts science fiction goes, I really enjoyed this film, and you should definitely check it out. So if you haven't seen Sunshine, it is well worth your time.
Yeah, it is. Sunshine is really good. It's an honorable mention for me. It didn't make my list, but it is a really good little kind of slice of potential disastrous future, and it's also a good thriller at the same time.
Yep.
Good pick.
Thanks.
All right. So we go from the sun. So now let's go to the moon, where we're going to talk about Duncan Jones's Moon, starring Sam Rockwell as a moon miner. Essentially, he harnesses minerals from the moon, and with the help of a robot companion played by Kevin Spacey, and he essentially finds out that things are not all it seems, and he is going to be left there and not sent back home like he thinks he is, and that there's something much more sinister at work. It's an excellent, kind of deep, twisting science fiction film that, believe it or not, even my parents like this. My mom liked this film, so I think this has a broad appeal.
Interesting. Moon, huh?
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. All right. My number 3 then is WALL-E. So Matt had talked about it earlier, but what they're able, the heart and emotion they're able to inject into this animated film is just, it tears me up every time I watch it. And the fact that the opening, 20 plus minutes, there's not an ounce of dialogue.
Yeah.
It's an incredible feat what they're able to pull off with this thing. And the romance between Wally and Eva is so just pure, and there's so much joy in it, right? And it also, unfortunately, is probably, in regards to its story and the future that it tells, probably not that far off, unfortunately. But still, it's a great message, great animation. It's a lot of fun. It'll make you laugh, make you cry. As I said before, it's the best thing I think Pixar has done. And WALL-E is my number 3.
Yeah, I didn't put it higher. It is a great film. I mean, it may be the best film on this list as an overall, but I felt like it was kind of light on the science fiction. Yeah. So I put it lower on the list.
Fair enough.
All right, so my number 2, I think, is going to be also stealing Chris's thunder a little bit, is Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men. It is a film essentially about how humanity has lost the ability to procreate. We can no longer have children, and society is in a steady decline and march towards extinction, essentially. It takes place in England, starring Clive Owen, Michael Caine. And essentially what happens is they discover a pregnant woman who's being hidden by an underground resistance from her being exploited by the government, and those who may want to try and use her for their own gain as humanity's salvation. Beautifully shot, has some incredible technical achievements in it, wonderfully acted, and the story is just absolutely gripping. Children of Men is a fantastic film that I watch probably every couple of years.
So, the rest of my list is a little anticlimactic. My number 2 is Duncan Jones's Moon.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Rockwell, Moon Miner, and there's something going on, like Matt said, and it's really, it's the first feature film by Duncan Jones, whose father is famous for some reason. And it is great because it's got a great little mystery at the heart of the film, what's really happening on this little mining camp platform thing, whatever it is. So as stuff is revealed, it's great. It's a great little science fiction thriller. So yeah, Moon. Go ahead, Matt. Number 1.
All right. Well, my number 1 is Chris's number 5, which I think is altogether too low. It's Steven Spielberg's Minority Report, based off of the Philip K. Dick story, as many of the great science fiction films are. Essentially, again, like Chris said, Tom Cruise is a member of a division in the Washington, D.C. police called Pre-Crime, where these 3 psychics, they can predict murder when it happens, specifically murder, and that there has never been a premeditated murder since this has been put into place. Essentially, it brings about questions about what is fate, You know that if somebody had the ability to do this, this would be in place within a heartbeat, whether it's right to arrest and sentence somebody for something that they haven't done, which is a terrifying thought. And of course, Tom Cruise is faced with the fact that he is being accused of these crimes. I'm still of the belief that the entire film is a fever dream, that he was caught, and that what you're seeing is him reliving the events of what happened at the diversion of while he's in prison, in the psychic prison that he's on ice. That's my interpretation of the end of that film. But I adore it. It's peak Spielberg. It's nice to see Spielberg get back to some science fiction. It's action packed. It's really propulsive. The implications are very timely and twisted, and I adore that film. I can watch it over and over and over again.
That's good. I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, what's the film that you like so much?
My number one is one of the 5 best films of the aughts.
Yeah.
And that is Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men. Clive Owen, Julianne Moore, as Matt said. You have this, well, he told you what it's about, but the themes running through this thing are really this dystopian future, which we almost seem to be seeing play out today. At least we're on the precipice of some of this stuff potentially actually happening. And Cuarón is so sure-handed with this thing, and it has one of my all-time favorite single-shot action scenes in cinematic history. When he's bringing the young woman to try and get her right to the boat, then the battle is happening all around them. Just breathtaking in its cinematography. It was nominated for 3 Academy Awards. It is fantastic. As I said, it's one of the best films of that decade. You had No Country for Old Men, There Will Be Blood. Of course, I think There Will Be Blood being the best film of the decade. But it is easily, I think, in the top 5, maybe number 4. I'm not sure. Either way, I can't recommend it enough. It is, again, a film I watch every couple years. Just like Matt said, it holds up exceptionally well. If you haven't seen Children of the Men, folks, I am telling you, blind buy it today. If you don't like it, Matt will reimburse you. It is that good. If we just did a top 5 films of that year, regardless of science fiction, it would be probably 1 or 2 for me. I mean, it is solid, and it's aged better, and I think it's finally over the last 5 years or so, I think, started to get the public reception and accolades that critically it got at the time. So
yeah,
there you go. That's my number 1. So honorable mentions for me, Matt. I had on here Avatar. I mean, I think you had to have it on there in some capacity. Cloverfield. We talked a little bit about The Mist in the beginning. The other Spielberg big sci-fi film from that decade, War of the Worlds, even though it's weakened by a poor final act and whatever Tim Robbins is doing. District 9, Neil Blomkamp's film. Signs, I think, is quite good. It still has one of the greatest scares of that decade. When Joaquin Phoenix, the alien walks down across the alleyway or something like that. I
agree, yeah.
I would throw in Schwarzenegger's 6th Day, really lower tier Arnold, but still I think kind of fun, as well as Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. And then, of course, I think, I don't know if I should say of course, Revenge of the Sith. I wanted to give it a little love too. And then, Matt, I went back and forth. I was going to put these in my list, but I felt they were more supernatural horror thrillers and science fiction films.
Okay.
The Hellboy movies.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I would not quantify those as science fiction. I would like a dark fantasy type.
Okay. So I made the right decision.
You did. Ones that you didn't mention that were on my list, Pitch Black, kind of a alien film starring Vin Diesel. A personal favorite of mine that doesn't get a lot of love, and it's a very small fan base, but it's quite good, is Serenity. Kind of the movie ending to Joss Whedon's unjustly canceled Firefly show, which is great. Doomsday, about a kind of post-apocalyptic Scotland, where everybody refers to being Celts,
how did I forget about? I love Doomsday. I think once we shift out of the city into the countryside, I think it loses a bit of its momentum. Yeah. But I love Doomsday. How did I forget about that? Thank you for remembering.
Yeah, no problem. A kind of lesser-known one starring Ben Foster, Pandorum, about a kind of generation ship where it's kind of been taken over by monsters. It's kind of a cool little creepy sci-fi film. And then, of course, I had to throw out some love out there. The Star Trek reboot, the original, the first one. It's quite good.
Did I forget that one too? I guess I did.
You did, yeah.
I missed that. I'm really slipping. I wonder if I would even swap that out with my Minority Report. Really upset Matt.
Yeah, I was surprised that it didn't make your list anywhere. I would guess that you probably would swipe that out with Minority Report, since you had to be convinced that you liked Minority Report on multiple viewings.
Yeah, all right, I'm going to do that. I'm going to call an audible right now at the end of the show. Since how did I forget that Star Trek came? You know what it is? I Googled science fiction films between 2000 and 2009, and it didn't show up. So
gotcha.
I totally forgot.
Right.
That is just embarrassing. Well, you know what, though? I'm a hack. I'm not going to beat myself up over it.
It's okay. This is your show. You make the rules.
That's right. What are your 5 favorite science fiction films released between 2000 and 2009 that you can find or remember? Shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. If you're not familiar, folks, if you go over to our Twitter handle over there at @thefirstrun, you can actually see our calendar, so you can see what's coming up. We are actually in the middle of updating it again. We have officially given up that there will be any big theatrical releases this year, so we have made some changes. So next week we will be discussing Palm Springs, which is currently streaming on Hulu, and we'll wrap up our sci-fi marathon with Big Man Japan. We'll be doing 2 top 5s. Oh, no, we're just doing the Foreign Sci-Fi Marathon Awards for that one.
Right, exactly.
We're not doing 2010 through 2019.
We're not.
That'll be fun.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Do a search for The First Run. Scroll. Eventually you will find us. Go over Apple Podcasts and give us a review. We'll read it on air, and it'll help other people find the show. And I think that's it, Matt. Why don't we go ahead and take an extended break, and we will see you all soon. Take care.